Welcome to Standards Michigan's weekly open office hour teleconference, where the door is open to discuss the week's work, but also we expand upon the underlying philosophy and the strategy that guides that work. On the first Wednesday of the month, we are examining the monthly release of the U.S. Census Bureau report on construction spend in the education and healthcare industry. During the remaining weeks of the month, we will be having an open agenda. We hope for interactive discussion on our priorities and approaches. Our streaming advocacy work is focused on strengthening the voice of the user interest, the end market stakeholder, or as we like to say, the user, owner, final fiduciary. In the education facilities industry, the end market stakeholder works to guarantee a safe and sustainable environment. This sets the stage for the opportunities the education industry provides for our nation's college students. The facilities our faculty need to carry out their research, as well as being the setting for healthcare delivery, athletic events, and ultimately a central element in state and local brand identity. We estimate that of the $300 billion the education industry spends on building and construction, operations, maintenance, energy, safety, over half is governed by the business and technical standards accredited by ANSI. We have explained on our Standards Michigan website that apart from what the University of Michigan started 20 years ago, most of the education facilities industry is not very active in the development of business and technical standards. Before I turn the call over to Mike, we would like to remind the facility constituencies in our industry, including the university-affiliated healthcare systems, to participate in the U.S. Census Department's surveys. For more on this subject, I will be turning the call over to Mike, but first I would like to welcome our calling guest, which is Jim Ginnity. Jim.
Hello, this is Jim Ginnity. I'm with the University of Michigan. I'm the training manager and the OS1 coordinator for the plant building services. And I'm also the writing committee chairman for the OS1 Simon Institute Standard Development Organization.
Terrific, Jim. Thank you so much for your participation. Now I'd like to turn our teleconference over to Mike Anthony. Mike.
Thanks very much, Christine. I want our listeners to understand that the Census Bureau looks back 2 months, so that what we see in the March report, it's released the first day of every month at 10 o'clock by the Census Bureau, division of the Department of Commerce, that they're looking backward 2 months. So we'll see our data come up here. What we do is we download. This is what ends up being posted on the internet, and you have to get used to the way they lay out their numbers. So you'll notice that they discriminate between private and public construction. We'll first look at public construction because a lot of the facilities, schools, colleges, universities are public. It doesn't mean the Harvards and the Rhode Island School of Designs and the Cranbrook Institutes, that would be under private construction. So if we look at public construction here, and let's see if I can get my little magic wand here. There's a little, I think I don't, where have I put my little magic wand? Oh, let's see, there's a pointer. Here we go. Okay, that's what I wanted to get. Okay, so it's broken up between private and public construction. And you'll see here that construction was at a seasonally adjusted annual rate of $68.8 billion. That's up roughly 1.9%. This report has a lot of information about how these numbers jump around. You should know that this construction spend includes renovations above $75,000. The Census Bureau contracts, I think, with Dodd reports, and they get this every month. So this is the origin of a lot of the raw data. So it's lumpy data, but when you look at this stuff enough, you begin to see consistencies, and you can apply your judgment as to what it really means to you. So educational construction rate, so which means at the end of a year, you're running along at a clip of about $68.8 billion. Okay, So let's move on to the next page then, if I can get my Prezi to go to the next. There we go. So we'll go over to the next slide. That takes us over here. Oh, we got a little bit closer. That's a closer view. The next page of us shows us something, and this is one of those characteristics of this report you just have to kind of get used to, is that now they've broken it up. They're adding upward here, just so you know. So they're looking at total construction right up in this area here. But when you take total private construction and total public construction, and let's just do educational, you get 68.8 billion there, and you get private residential construction at 18.3 billion. You're going to come up with 87.1 billion. And that's the number that I generally use as my number. I know it's broken up. Now, we've invited the Census Bureau to talk in more granular detail about this, and at some point we will try to get that done. But for the moment, I hope that enlightens a little bit of our discussion and about what this might possibly mean. One of the features of our spend I thought is noteworthy has to do with its comparison to how much the United States spends on the space exploration. NASA's annual budget is 18, and we're spending about 87 billion. So you might want to meditate a bit on that. We're spending roughly almost 5 times as much money building and renovating school facilities as we are exploring the universe. Okay, so this is a part of the presentation that we run through very quickly. One of our points here, a larger point, has to do with very often how countercyclical the education industry can be. When the economy is going down, people will go back to school, and when the economy is up, people will still go to school and try to increase their prospects through more education. So it's one of the characteristics of the education industry which is noteworthy and differs from many other industries. So I've showed how the gross domestic product is very much a characteristic of our economy, which affects other industries, but maybe not ours as much. So one of the points I try to make is that a lot of our suppliers, not the labor markets, but the product suppliers, are looking for faster growing markets. It's no surprise here where the faster growing markets are. That's important because a lot of the standards are going to be developed out of Europe. We know that the IEC, the ITU, the ISO are all headquartered here. Europe is in a very good position to service these markets. And we try to make the point that the United States needs to be aware of this. Now, Joe Bhatia at ANSI says that maybe things are a little bit more equal than we think, and I would certainly trust his point of view over mine, but it's a point that I tend to see with growing, the rate at which the Europeans are influencing technical standards seems to have a gathering pace which we need to be aware of. So without belaboring that too much, you should be aware University of Michigan has a subscription to a market research organization called IBIS World, and here's where we go. To try to get benchmarks on how much we're spending, looks like annual growth rate. These are people, for example, Lucas Isaacowicz. This is somebody who actually are dealing with the pathology, the economic pathology of our industry every day. Unlike me, I'm doing a lot of different things, but one of the, they characterize our industry generally as one which is mature in its life cycle stage. Let's see if I can get a little bit closer here. This is a screenshot, so that's why. So that's why it's a little bit fuzzy here. So it's considered by economists to be a late cycle stage type of industry. Very heavy regulation. We may be the most heavily regulated industry other than maybe the nuclear power industry. Um, and that's the regulation, as you know, will tend to slow things down and raise costs. So I'm not going to go through all of these, but take my word for it. Look at public schools. It's noteworthy that actually public schools, if you look at 635 compared to the 461 for colleges and universities, that comparatively speaking, the 635 roughly sorry about that. It's about 2/3 the cost. This is a third more of annual spend. Now also remember that this includes, they basically break it up between salaries and all the other costs. So what's left, so for example, this represents all the teachers, all the administrators, that's their wages, and what's left then would be considered the facility or the other business expenses. All right, we do this for private schools, we do this for community colleges, for-profit universities. It's worth noting that their revenue is $27.5 billion, that their growth rate is 1.2%. It's interesting here that, again, the characteristic of the industry is it's actually in a growth mode, unlike other parts of the education industry. So you add all of them up, what you end up doing, you take labor, that's the course categorization they make in the IBIS reports. What's left over after all that is about $453 billion. So you take all the teacher salaries, what's left is all these other costs, $453.3 billion. And I've done this again. Now this number was from about 3 years ago, 2013, and I updated it last year, and we found that there's about a 6% increase in costs after the labors have been considered. So we went from 460 to 473. So the industry's costs are going up. We don't know values there. So getting to the why we use the 300 billion number as one that's convenient for us is that if you take the size of the U.S. economy, which is a 17, actually this needs to be updated. I think we're closer to 18 trillion here, and we're about this percentage of the U.S. economy. We end up using these numbers. We get 1.2 billion and 1.2 trillion for all costs, and you'll see where you'll begin to see how this 300 billion number seems to be confirmed with other data from other organizations and other sources. I also put in $30 billion energy costs. It's roughly 10% of all these costs here. There's a lot of work groups involved in dealing with energy, certainly in the standards area. It's a high priority item, but as I like to say, that it's only 10%. In fact, that's the high end. Many organizations are only spending 5 to 8% of their annual revenue on energy costs, but it seems to have an outsized influence on the culture of the education industry. And I think that we frankly could get more money. We could be more effective in advocacy if we just let the energy issue aside and were to focus on management standards, where there's an enormous amount of duplication. So the lack of standards is causing a great deal of destructive duplication in the education industry, in my opinion. Okay, why is 300 billion important? We try to remember that that would make us about a Fortune 2.5 company. And okay, so that's just to give you some perspective of what those numbers mean. I won't go into this too much, but I have a spreadsheet where we look at all of our advocacy achievements and see what they might mean on our balance sheet. So we have a very coarse way of talking about project first cost and O&M cost and avoided first cost. We'll have to talk about avoided first cost in another teleconference, but regardless, it's a difficult concept, because counting something that doesn't happen is very difficult by its nature. So again, a different teleconference. But suffice to say, we make our time is effective. with even our most conservative estimates, and this is actually a little bit out of date, but we're finding ourselves somewhere in around the 2 to 3% with some consistency in avoided cost opportunity. Now remember, I can't stop you from buying things that cost too much, but what I am able to do is to change the standard so that that thing doesn't cost so much. If you want to spend 10, 20% more on something, a product or service, that's fine if you think there's something there. But what we've done is actually taken the technical characteristics that determine the cost of that project apart from a fair profit and have changed that. So we come off about 3.4% off the cost of a new building. Now, again, this is also out of date. We rolled these up. We just had one recently out of ASHRAE 90.1. That committee wanted to make it mandatory for all school and university buildings to have daylight dimming controls. These are devices or systems that look at the daylight in a room and adjust the light in it, and it's assumed to be LED. It's another LED lighting change-out driver. Those installations can run on the order of $100 to $1,000. In some large conference rooms with windows, they'll run the better part of $10,000. We don't need that. We don't need to make that mandatory. So that would be added to this at some point when I get a graphics designer on that one. So again, with the assertive advocacy, we feel that we've been able to justify our existence here, and we feel that we could expand and be even more effective. Finally, I'll close this out with a little giggle here from the New Yorker magazine, is that it helps me make the point that regulation is a game played over and over again. It's always happening. It's part of the American system, and we need to respect it because in many cases we want certain things done. And in any organization that is resisting over-regulation, they're also out there trying to get something regulated that it's to its economic advantage. So we can't be too sanctimonious about it, and we just have to be even-handed and judicious and magnanimous. And we try to stay classy when we win. We try to stay classy when we lose. The point things we're in the game. So back when we used to do this on a Friday afternoon, we have a great weekend. But and I think what we'll do is we'll probably change this for the next time around. So I think I'm going to stop things there and open it up for questions. Jim, Christine, do you want to add, subtract, reflect upon what I just said? No? Okay.
Yeah, thank you, Michael. Thanks for this great information, and it's really important that we understand what the total cost of ownership is and how we rank in the whole cost of doing business in the nation. So I think this is really good and viable information. So hopefully that we can get this stuff in maybe a PDF form or something like that. That would be great, so we can continue to look at it and review it and things like that. So thanks a lot for your report there.
Okay. So what we have here, just to let you know that Joe Agron is the editor. He's actually a subscriber to our blog. He's a good guy, and they prepare this document for their advertisers. This helps us confirm what we're seeing. You'll notice that we've tracked these in the more expanded version of that presentation. We show how this number has gone up and down. We've seen this number go above 300 billion, and we're also seeing our 87 billion confirmed here. I'm not sure, this might be backward looking, but we again, this number of 300 billion does seem to show up. And I'd also like to make the point that 300 billion not only is our construction rate, not only is this number here 4 to 5 times as much as we spend on space exploration, but all of the money that we put into the student loan program is only about 150 billion. So again, putting that in perspective, I think maybe next month I will show that data to give the leadership of the education industry a better idea of how much they're spending on new facilities compared to how much they're spending on student loans. Could be an interesting equation.
Michael, I'm just looking at your current screenshot, and it's kind of interesting to see, at least in my business, that washroom supplies, soap, paper, and that thing are in the top purchases of this $365 billion. So that's a very interesting number for us.
Well, that's a big deal. As you know, that's a big deal. I mean, that will run 20% of any O&M budget. I know you guys are spending what, 35 million or so, just keeping things clean and hygienic around campus.
Yeah.
So
and I wonder if the maintenance chemicals are also a part of our cleaning chemicals. So.
Yeah. Okay, Christine, I see you are muted. You want to close this one out? I think I'm happy enough to call it a wrap, and we can move on. We'll move on and look forward to next month's report. Yeah?
Yes, thank you, Mike. Some housekeeping before we close the call, though. Remember that our next open conference call will be next Wednesday, March 9th at 11 o'clock. The link to the call-in numbers will be available on the homepage of our blog site. Our plan is to focus on the construction report the first Wednesday after it is released. The remaining 3 weeks of the month, we will review all of the moving issues of the week. Also, the University of Michigan will be co-hosting the American National Standards Institute Annual Company Member Forum on Tuesday and Wednesday, May 10th and 11th. The ANSI Education Committee will meet on Tuesday, May 10th, 1 to 5. And ANSI members may register for the event at the ANSI website. And for more information, there's also a link on the Standards Michigan website. We are also transitioning to a new YouTube channel that can be identified by the @StandardsUMich icon. And I want to thank everyone very much. We hope to see you next Wednesday at 11.
I'll show them how to get to our blog. So, okay, everybody, before we go, one last thing from Mike. Down here, this is our blog, our main page where most of the action occurs, the daily action, and you can subscribe to our blog. There's a lot of, we don't want to clutter people's email box. We think we've broken it up. We're going to have to consolidate some of this stuff here, but here's how you subscribe to the blog. And of course, I'll put a pitch in for following us on Twitter. So I think what I'll do, I'll finally close this thing out here. Thanks very much, colleagues nationally and I guess across the globe.